So welcome to Garden Masterclass. Garden Masterclass is run by myself, Annie Guilfoyle, and Noel Kingsbury. And we started this about 4 years ago, the idea being to hold live events all over the British Isles and into mainland Europe in interesting gardens, nurseries, different venues, with the very best people from the industry, from garden design, horticulture, landscape architecture, garden history, nursery owners, plants people, and that's been all going tremendously well. But of course, this year we've had to postpone a lot of our events due to the dreaded COVID virus. So we've now started offering a lot more online. We have our online free talks on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, and we have pay-to-view videos on Vimeo. For all the information on up-and-coming webinars and anything that we've done or are about to do, you need to go to our website, which is www.gardenmasterclass.org. And also on the website is our email address, which is gardenmasterclass@gmail.com. And you can email us for any questions, or if you'd like to be on our mailing list. And we send out usually about 2 newsletters a month, just to keep you updated with what's coming up, current news, what's new, and anything exciting to tell you.
Great, thanks Annie. So this YouTube broadcast is a recording of one of our Thursday garden chats, which happen at 6 o'clock London time every Thursday, which was a weekly continuation of the 5-day-a-week broadcasts we ran during lockdown. Now, we do these for free because we feel it's important they're kept free for people on furlough, students, people on low income, and people indeed in poorer countries. We don't want to charge for them, which does mean that if you can afford to give us something to contribute towards our running costs and our time, that will be very much appreciated. So there is a donations button on the online page of our website, gardenmasterclass.org. So enjoy this particular recording.
Welcome everybody to our Thursday evening chat, Thursday garden chat. It's just me tonight. Noel is in transit. Although I have a feeling he might sneakily get online somewhere and just to check up that we're doing everything properly, but anyway, but no, he's on his way back to Portugal. He left yesterday morning. He's left Plague Island, as he calls it, and gone back to the safety of Portugal, where he's got decent broadband, so that'll be a relief for everybody. I think most of you are regulars, so you know the deal. Obviously, if you want to be on the mailing list, please email us at Garden Masterclass. I've got to let people in. That's Jenny in America. Yes, gardenmasterclass.com. gardenmasterclass@gmail.com. Please email us and we can put you on our mailing list. We've got some fantastic webinars coming up. We've got, they're sort of coming in fast and furious. So we're programming right through until January now. So keep an eye on the webinars. We did have an amazing webinar last night with Rosie Hardy on perennial geraniums. And if you missed it and you didn't catch it, that will be up on Vimeo in a couple of days' time. And it's well worth watching because, you know, Rosie went through actually all the kind of old varieties and old species of geranium, but by goodness, we learned so much about ones that work in complete shade and dry shade and wet shade, and it was really brilliant. She's a wonderful plantswoman, so that will be on Vimeo. If anybody is we're doing this all for free, so if anybody's in a position to donate, then please do feel free to donate to Garden Masterclass, because we're doing all sorts of things and we're developing this as we go along. So I'm going to get started and introduce tonight's tonight's guest, who's Michael Wachter, who I've known Michael now for quite a few years because Michael works at Great Dixter. And so I feel like, and I think many of you who are watching tonight know Michael as well, but know him in a capacity of working at Great Dixter, and we're going to see a very different life that he leads tonight. He's going to talk to us about his love of wild foraging. Anyway, Michael, just to start with, welcome. But how are things at Dixter? Just tell us how life is there at the moment. What have you been up to, and what's happening at the moment?
Yeah, thanks very much, Annie. Yeah, Dixter is busy. We just finished the meadow cutting, and we're doing a lot of seed sowing. So we're sowing all our hardy annuals now, because you can sow them in March, but we just want to push that work forward so we don't have to sow and prick out once the weeds are germinating. So all the poppies and larkspurs we're pricking out. So we're busy, keeping ourselves busy during those days.
Yeah. And visitors, I mean, the garden's still open, actually, isn't it? It's staying open a little bit longer this year.
Yeah, it's still open till the end of this month, I think, and yeah, we're squeezing the last bit of color out of the garden, and yeah, it's a lovely time. I think the visitors that do come get quite an exclusive experience, because there's less visitor numbers, so it's quite nice.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you were saying that actually normally by now you're starting to kind of take the garden apart, and actually you're having to hold off on that a little bit because the garden's still open, so it's going to make the sort of what you're doing slightly different this year, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm so happy that it was such a warm day today, because I mean, imagine we would have the first frost and all the tender stuff in the garden, and you know, so
yeah. And Michael, remind me, how many years have you been at Dixter now?
6 years, yeah.
6 years. Wow, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so tonight you're not talking about Dixter, you're talking about your passion for well, I think foraging almost doesn't do it justice. To me, it's I think, well, how did you describe it to me when I asked you how to describe what you do? It's indigenous.
Indigenous, yeah, rediscovering an indigenous lifestyle, maybe.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so do you want to start the screen share and get going, okay, and talk to us and show us show us your presentation? That would be wonderful.
Let's see, share. Okay, how is that? Can you see that?
That's looking very good. Yep, that's looking
fantastic.
Great. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Annie for inviting me, and Noel, and thanks for everyone who took their time out of their day today to be with us for this hour. I'm going to take you through a journey that has been for the last 10 years part of my life. And oops, okay. So first slide, this is my brother and me. This must be about more than 10 years ago now. And this was sort of my first time in the mountains. And this was, I asked my geography teacher in school, I said, oh, I really want to see wild places, and where can I go? And she said, well, you have to go either to the North Sea, or you have to go above 2,800 meters altitude to see a truly wild place. So then I said, fine, that's great, I can do this. And I took my brother, dragged him into the mountains, and we went rock climbing, and it was very interesting, because it took me 5 years to really realize that when I took this picture, waking up on this slope with my friend, that I realized the reason I went to this mountain is because I actually had quite a tricky time in life, and the mountains gave me the stability that I really needed. So I was sort of clinging on to these rocks that are the ultimate symbol for stability. So I was incredibly thankful in this moment when I realized that, sitting on top of this mountain in the Bavarian Alps. And then I said to my brother, I said, you remember when we went first time in the mountains, how cool that was? Should we do something longer? So I wanted to immerse myself and see what else I can learn from these hills and what they can teach me. So I took my brother and another friend, and we took the train down to Munich, and arrived in Munich, and we said, we're just going to walk south, okay? So we walked south for 3 days until we hit the mountains, and then we just climbed the first hill that we saw, and then we climbed the second hill that we saw, and then we climbed the third hill until there was no mountains anymore. So what that gives me was this incredible connection with these hills. And you know, sometimes you hear these things about there is something bigger in nature, and it's sometimes hard to really get that. But when you stand in front of a mountain like this and hear the thunder, it really humbles me. It really humbled me. And so it's a lovely way of putting myself into perspective. And I sometimes get that when I look into the stars, but definitely I get that when I stand on a mountain like this. And it's this trust that I gained through trusting my partner not to lose that rope, trusting my gear to hold me, and trusting my ability to really climb those hills. But also the resilience. There was a few moments like on the bottom left, we had to pass that was on 2,800, and it was a steel rope that went down. It was pure fog, but there's a real beauty when you put your body into suboptimal conditions and you get out of that. Then you realize that you actually can take so much more, and that was really nice. The top right picture is my friend Ludwig, who has he's afraid of heights. And I said to him, look how beautiful, don't you feel so connected? And he just said to me, he said, Michael, can we please go down? You see the friends are changing in the picture because they wouldn't come next time, So then I knew this experience had to have an element of risk to become real. So this is the self-reliability aspect of it. And what's beautiful about it, what I learned in the mountains here, was that every step I took, I had to take with great care and with confidence. And this is something I try to carry on in my life, to every step that I took, to take that with great care and confidence. So that was really beautiful. And the persistence of it, at the end of the trip, we walked about 550 kilometers and conquered about 22,000 meters altitude. It's like as if you would climb Mount Everest 8 times. But this is really nice because in my life, whenever I have a goal now, I know that I can achieve that if I put my mind behind it and be persistent. And the integrity. This is the morning when we woke up, and if the clouds wouldn't be there, you would probably be able to see Belluno. And we were said to ourselves, we will walk south until we will be able to drink Prosecco. And that's what we did. We just hit the Strada del Prosecco. It was the only time where we really got lost, because Prosecco and hiking is not a good idea. But it's a very beautiful road, though. I can highly recommend it. And then after we arrived, I worked in a landscape architecture company. That's my profession. That's what I learned in university. And as you can see, there is no trees in these designs, and I really enjoyed it, but I kind of it wasn't quite following my soul, really. So then I really started wobbling, and I thought, oh my God, this is not me. What am I going to do? So I knew I had all these powerful lessons from the mountains inside me. I just need to reach them again. So I knew I just need to spend some time by myself. So I told my boss, I'm not going to work here for much longer. And I just took my bike and I went south again to Munich, because I knew that is the start of a great journey. And this time I said, I'm going to go north. So I just went north with my bicycle. And I spent about 40 days just on my bicycle by myself in the roads. And that's when I started eating wild food. But I didn't really quite know what could I eat, how much can I actually rely on wild food. And but that was a very beautiful journey to put myself into this solitude. And then I arrived on this beautiful island here. I spent another 5 weeks by myself on this island. You can see the tiny dot in the sea. This is my head. And there was food in this little boat. It had no paddles. I don't know why it hadn't any paddles. They told me to tie the rope around my stomach, and then I had to swim to the island. Because it was too flat to actually reach it by boat. And that's where I spent another 5 weeks. So that was about a good 2.5 months by myself. And what was beautiful about this was the first 2 weeks when I was there, I remember I was crying. You know, I thought I missed out on all these things that I need to know. You know, the news and checking on things on social media. And then after that, I was actually felt really free. And I think if you look at that picture, when I sat there and took this picture, I think this still to this day was the only time in my life where I could really feel or get a glimpse of the freedom that animals really have when I watch them. So this was my bathroom here. I was monitoring birds, by the way. So I was it was for wildlife conservation. So there was one thing for my face, one for my hands, one for my feet, one for my stomach. This was the toilet. And then this was the salt meadow. And then here was the food. And so every 2 weeks, there was a boat that brought some food. And then on this day, I took this picture and there was a storm coming up. And then my satellite phone rang, and the guy looking after me on the main coast said, "Michael, stay indoors. It's going to be quite rough." And I said, well, why are you staying indoors? And the next day I woke up and the whole island was gone. It was only my house sticking out of the sea. And the thing was that, and that's how I got into foraging. That's why I'm telling the stories. So I had all my food. I ditched the fridge because I only had a little solar panel, and I also had a CD player and one CD. So I thought I'd rather listen to some music than run the fridge. So I dug a hole under the hut, and I put all my vegetables in there. And the problem was I had to learn the hard way that most of my vegetables can actually swim. So I lost the majority. I think I got some yogurt left and I can't remember, the odd potato, but most of it was gone, and the next food would come within 1 week. So I had to do something. And what was really interesting is that this island represented my little world, basically. So I shipped in food from outside, as we do a lot as well in the real world, importing food. So then I actually looked at what's right in front of me, and I thought, I wonder if I can eat this stuff, you know. So then I learned that actually there's a lot of things like mashed samphire here and purslane in here, you know, that I can actually eat. So I got through this week by eating the odd yogurt and a lot of the sea purslane and the marsh samphire, and there was the majority of plants that grow in the salt meadow are actually edible or medicinal. So this is really cool. And then I thought, wow, why in hell do I not in life look more right what's in front of me? So when I came back, then I had to really re-socialize, you know, and spend 2.5 months by myself. I really got to know the birds, and not just the birds like the oyster catcher, but I actually could see the individual oyster catcher by its character, and I knew exactly who that was. So I gave them names like Fridolin. He was a very nervous one who every time I got water and he was peeping along like so then I was wearing earplugs for a long time, actually, because the world was just too loud. But then, so that was a big shift in my life where I just thought, how in hell am I going to deal with reality again, you know? So then I realized, and that's when this question in my life appeared about how do we actually live? How do we used to live for 97% of our ancestral history? And what's natural for me? And what's good for me? And then, so that's my sort of life question, I would say. So then I looked, how far do we have to look back to find the answer? So I looked, the only proven models we have for existing sustainably as humans are hunter-gatherer societies. So then I thought, wow, that's a long way back. Let's have a look. So if you look at this chart here, just have a look at the bottom bit, and you can see how it raises up, and I circled the sustainable level of our planet, and so you can see that we actually exceeded that so much. And I had to look very far back into before the invention of agriculture. So I'm going to talk you through some of the contemporary hunter-gatherer societies that I was able to visit, and what I was sort of gaining from that, fragments from our pre-Christian European culture. That's just a small part. And then the experimental and experiential exposure, which is all the foraging. That's all the fun part. So I was lucky to visit the Chukwanzi in Namibia, and they are some of the oldest living. This is one of the oldest successful economic and cultural humans expression that we have. They live on the same patch of land for more or less than 300,000 years. They are the people who never left Africa, and we are all genetically related to those people. They're our oldest cousins, so there's a real beauty and in visiting them and learning really from their culture that's left. So their economic notions are really interesting. They spend about 15 to 17 hours food collecting, and then on top of that, about 20 hours of domestic work. So it's roughly a 40-hour working week, but a lot of that includes cooking and preparing the stuff that we do at home. There is no resource accumulation, and that creates a fiercely egalitarian and individualistic society. It's a society where everybody depends on each other, which is really, really beautiful. It's a hunter-gatherer society, basically. They are fragmented now, and they have a different lifestyle, so I'm talking more about the old part. Play is a central aspect of releasing tension and exploring boundaries. So if you imagine you live in a community where you all depend on each other's survival, play is hugely important, because you can't be angry with someone for a long time, because you really depend on this guy or this woman to forage the food or to hunt the food for you. And that's really what I love about them so much. If you look at this picture, it's actually the adults that are playing, and the children have to facilitate the play. And this is really, really beautiful. Often you see that the children have to set up the game so the adults can actually have a lot of fun. And yeah, it made me really realize how serious we are as a culture. You know, we came in with all these really serious songs of our, on our guitars, and they just having so much fun and just playing around all the time. So they also, when there's something new, they approach it in a playful manner, and I really, really like that aspect. So this is the nest of a chimpanzee, and if you would hold the hand of your mother, and she would hold the hand of her mother, and you go back in a line from where I live to Newcastle, which is about, 300-400 miles away, the last hand you would hold is the hand of a chimpanzee. And if you take that nest that protects the chimpanzee and you take it upside down, the moment when we came down from the trees, Homo erectus, that's exactly the shelter that you see that the Chukwanzi still built in the desert. And this is really beautiful. The house is always built by the women. The women also provide 80% of the food. So they're really, really important as well. So that it is egalitarian, but the women and the elders have a slightly more say in the society, because they know the foraging ground. And if those guys are moving, they have more of a say. The elders hold the collective memory of the tribe, and the women know the best foraging grounds. Simple as that. Hunting and ego is really interesting. So when the guys come back, so on the right, this is one of the best hunters left. There are about 15 people left that can do the traditional tracking and hunting with bows and arrows. So they have a spear and some bows and arrows. So when they come on with a big animal, the first thing that happens is the women and the elders would start mock them and ridicule them and make a lot of fun of them. And the reason is that you can't build up any ego. In a society that is fiercely egalitarian, ego is deadly. So it brings everybody down to the same level. And actually, this guy on the right, I gave him a present. I gave him my watch. He was really interested in my Casio watch. So I said to him, why don't we swap? You give me your bow and arrow, and I give you my watch. And then as soon as I gave him my watch, he started making fun of it. And I thought, how rude is that? That's incredibly rude. But the reason he did that was because he can replace his bow and arrow, but he can't recreate my watch. So that makes us unequal in our gift sharing. So by making fun of me, he would bring me down to the same level as him. So that was really interesting. The foraging aspect, harvesting is the main focus when you forage. It's up to the gods to grow the food. And this is really fun, in a hunter-gatherer society compared to an agricultural society, you don't put any labor in until you harvest. there is less work in times of abundance. They actually do work less. And I find that very interesting when you think about our culture now. We live in such abundant times, but we also work so hard. You know, I actually stepped down one day. I work part-time so I can spend more time outside foraging. And it's really just because I live in such abundant times. You know, agriculture also requires delayed return for effort to put in. So anyway, this was that part. The second part is just really tiny, some fragments left from our pre-Christian Indo-European culture. To be English, the English are the children of Ing, which is related to the goddess Freya, and I put the rune in there as well. It's from the angle. And we still have our weekdays. The name for our weekdays relates to the old gods. It's the Twias Day, Wodan's Day, Thor's Day, Frigga Day. And it's really beautiful because where I'm from in Germany, those gods might have different names, but they're very, very similar. So it's very, very interesting to see. The word husband is an Old Norse word means tiller of the soil. The word kid actually means young goat. So there's a lot of fragments, and this is really just a tip of the iceberg. So I find this highly interesting to study this. You know, when you think about the English language, we can talk about the past, we can talk about the present without changing the word. We can change the word. So I went to the pub, I go to the pub. But if you talk about the future, you can't change that word. I will go. So you have to enforce your will on that word to talk about the future. In all the Romanic languages, you can change that word. And apparently this has to do with that the future was always the hidden one, the secret one, the unknown one, skur. So it's very, very interesting. I love studying this and rediscovering. And myths and tales hold the collective values and beliefs of a culture. So for me, it's very interesting to study the old tales from where I'm from. For example, one of the oldest ones that we have is from Mother Hulda. The other one that's really old is the Water of Life. And I really love these symbolic tales. Mother Hulda actually originates in pre-Indo-European Neolithic culture. So it's a Stone Age story that we have left. It's one of our oldest origin myths, and the basic message is that the cycle of the seasons are massively important. And if we neglect our rituals, and neglect participating in the seasons, the weather will turn bad. The snow won't come anymore. Mother Hulda won't shake her beds anymore. So that's really, really interesting for me to study. The myths and tales are the anatomy of a culture. And then, so basically what's interesting is Britain has been colonized about three times. You know, first the Anatolian DNA that came over with the idea of agriculture, and then the Caucasian DNA that eradicated most of the languages except Finn, Basque, and another one. And then last time the Roman invasion with Caesar. So let's look at what Tacitus, the Romans, write about the Britons. And so the population was gradually led into the demoralizing temptations of arcades, baths, and eloquent banquets. The unsuspecting Britons spoke of such novelties as civilization, when in fact they were only a feature of their enslavement. So that was written by Tacitus about 98 AD. It's very, very interesting to study these things. So I knew I had to look beyond that and had to look into really the hunter-gatherer aspect of my culture. So now comes the fun part. This is really the foraging and all this stuff. So here you see a picture of my room. This is one of my walls, and here I dry all my herbs over the summer. It's a busy time. So here you see my medicine. I made a pledge to myself that about 10 years ago, that the majority or the only medicine I use in my life, I grow, harvest, and collect myself. And so far, so good. I have valerian here, which I use just as a calming herb. I have mugwort here, one of the oldest smudging herbs, and I use it for tea. It intensifies your dreams. And then there is sweet vernal. The grass has a chemical called coumarin, which is very soothing and calming as well. So very, very beautiful herbs that I treasure a lot. Yeah, the ceremony is very important for me. So if you just go out and forage, basically what happens is it's called economic foraging. So the main question would be, what can this plant do for me? But I want to go beyond that and actually go into ethnobotany. So how can I create a bond and a relationship with my environment? So here, how to create ceremony without being culturally appropriate, you know. So for me, it has to come from the land, and it has to speak to me directly through plants or through trees. So community creates ceremony, and ceremony creates community. It's a beautiful quote from, I think it's from a book called Braiding Sweetgrass that I really like. So yeah, this is smudging. And then here, making fire. Here I'm making fire with my partner. And we went camping to Knepp Wildland, the biggest rewilding place in the UK. It's fascinating, can really recommend it. And so there was a barbecue option, and I said to her, well, let's make fire the old way, of course, you know. So we were bow drilling along, and it was so beautiful to see when somebody does that. I feel like fire and bow drill has been such a huge part of my life. Whenever I do it, it runs so deep. It runs to the core of my soul. And yeah, so we made fire here with lime wood from Scotland. And then I made a pledge to myself saying, I only eat fish that I harvest myself from the land, or I don't eat fish. So I started getting into fishing. And I'm not a sport fisher at all. I only go out for food. And the only reason I go out is driven by only one thing. It's hunger. I wouldn't go out for anything else. So here, what's really interesting, it changed so much in my life, because on the left, what happened is, this is just a short video of me literally walking, but this is at 3 in the morning. And there were so many times where I had to get up at 2 in the morning, at 4 in the morning, because the sea doesn't care about, I live about 12 miles away from the sea. The sea doesn't care about if it's midday or morning, or if it's sunny or if it's rainy. The sea has its own rhythm. So I had to acclimatize myself to the rhythm of the sea. And I had to get really intimate with these fish. What you see on the plate is a sea bass. And during lockdown, I took this time to really get close to this fish. And I was, by the end of the lockdown, I was able to predict the fish's behavior by the hour, actually. I could know exactly where the fish is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at 4 o'clock, but only at that one specific spot where I watched that fish for month and month. So that was really interesting to be able to, because so this is a sea bass or on sea kale and sea spinach. It's a lovely meal, yeah. So I really think the majority of people who go fishing never realize that the reason they went fishing all their lives was not about catching fish. It's actually when you do go fishing or hunting or foraging, there is this sort of focus, but it's not a strict focus. It's just sort of a gentle focus. And this is what I believe is exactly what happens when you meditate. So a good friend of mine, Charlie, once said to me, hunter-gatherers, he assumes, used to live in constant meditation. So on the left, I'm following the footprints of dinosaur who lived about 24 million years, walked exactly the same paths as I do now. And then obviously these beautiful sunsets. But yeah, this is the constant meditation that I'm also really chasing, as well as food, obviously. And the beauty about this is, when I go out at 3 and stand in the sea with my bare feet for 3 hours, I probably lose as much calories as I get back from the fish. So it's this sort of cycle of gaining and losing calories that you can really feel when you go fishing. And then studying the forest, especially in the winter. Now is the time when I put my focus back into the forest. I sort of return from the sea, that I spend most of my time in the summer. It's about looking at plants like this oak tree, and observing it and realizing that there is a hole in this tree and there's a black mark that comes out, and that's the tannin in the tree. So to realize there's a lot of tannin that can help me make clothing, to make leather, for example. As well as that, it will help me with diarrhea if I make a tea out of the bark, for example. But also you can see how the bark is absolutely twisted. So if you would take this tree for timber, it would be the worst nightmare of your life. It has absolutely twisted grain inside, but also it has holes inside, so it might be partially rotten. So to look at a tree and being able to look inside that tree is absolutely beautiful. For me, it's about getting to know each other. Some people sometimes ask me, how do you connect to the wild? And I always say, it's exactly like with people. How do you connect with someone? You spend time with each other, right? And that's, for me, the only way. You spend time with each other and you start to listen to each other and ask each other questions. To look at this oak, to look at the acorns there, and to realize that if you spend your time collecting all these small acorns, you waste all your energy, and some of them have holes inside. And why is that? And why are they hollow inside? And then to realize, wow, one day actually this is a mast here, and this is when the acorns are there, and this is where I should be there with the oak tree as well. So it's about making these ropes of connection. I once asked one of the elders in Namibia, I said to them, what's your purpose in life? It's quite fun to ask them this sort of stuff, when they had this culture that was so old, and they were answering saying ropes of connection. So if you know that the oak has very heavy timber, that's a rope, but it's a bit of a fragile rope. So if you then learn about the oak, that it can actually provide you with acorns, provide you with food, it can you can tan your leather with that, your rope is getting stronger and stronger, and then you get this connection that's really solid. Here I make a rope, and I put this picture on the right in just to show that this is just the tip of the iceberg for me at home. I have to make sure I stay quite small because I share my house, and obviously I don't want to have skins and bark and rope everywhere in the house. So, but this is really, I wanted to see how far can I go by just really harvesting stuff that is within 20 kilometers of my house. So I started making clothing from deer that lives about 20 kilometers from my house. And that's the ultimate slow fashion, because to make this one shirt, it probably took me about 50 hours of solid work. I strained my back. I had to lay in bed for 3 days, couldn't move anymore, so this is really the ultimate slow fashion, but it's beautiful because it really connects me. Nice quote I wanted to share with you. It's a long one, but it's worth it. We're left with a schizophrenic approach to the natural world. Humans either conquer nature or destroy it. Sorry, I can't say it really. In its integrity, or they visit it as an outsider, idealizing its beauty and largely leaving it alone. These seemingly contradictory approaches to idealize nature or to commodify it are really two sides of the same coin. Both positions threat nature as an abstraction separate from humans, not understood, not real. And that's really where I stand. I stand right in the middle. I try to find a way of participating in a sustainable way so I can be a part of this whole bioregion. But also it's about food security for me. 70% of the world's food is generated from 12 plants and 5 animal species. So we live in a time where we think it's quite abundant, but actually in terms of species diversity, it's a very, very fragile diversity. So if you look at this picture here and you make a meal out of these ingredients, your species diversity is 1. It's all from the same plant, Brassica oleracea. And if you look at this picture here, this is just a gentle basket. I'm not even going funky with it. This is really just stuff that you would all recognize. My species diversity is 700% higher than on the picture before, okay? So this is incredibly resilient. There are an estimated about 400 edible plants in the UK, and the UK is not the most biodiverse place on earth. We only have about roughly 2,000 native plants. So really, there's a strong argument for food security in an unstable climate. Of course, foraging always means fresh and in season. If you eat something that's highly processed and includes preservatives, preservatives inhibit bacterial growth, and the bacteria is really in our digestive system what digests our food. Without bacteria, we can't digest our food. So if we dump preservatives into our body, we inhibit this bacterial growth. This is quite fun. So if you look at the bottle of Mountain Dew, to eat the same amount of sugar that's in 1.5 litre of Mountain Dew, you have to eat about 8.5 feet of sugar cane. There is no physical way a Paleolithic person or anyone could possibly eat that much sugar cane in a day. And this comes from a paleo dietary professor in the UK. So that's really interesting. We take in food that is not really bad for us, but process it in a way that we would have never have access to. So for me, it's not about what I eat. For me, it's about how I prepare it. So I eat whole foods prepared in an ancestral way. So I don't take all these. So this is really interesting here. You see what's different from us to other species. We have one of the weakest digestive tracts of all mammals, and we are one of the weakest species. If I would strip down and be naked in nature anywhere in the world, I'd probably struggle to survive, even though I have all these survival skills. And that's because I don't have strong nails, I don't have strong teeth, but what we do have is technology. And what the animals do inside their body, that's what we do outside with technology. So in this case, if you look at the pigeon, when grains enters the mouth of a pigeon, it goes first into a crop, which is this moist bag where the food will sit and ferment and sometimes even sprout, and then it will enter the stomach, the gizzard, which is a muscular disc which will grind the food down. And this is exactly what we would do if we would make a slow fermented sourdough bread. So we do it outside, we grind it down, we soak it, we let it ferment, and then we digest it. The cow has rumens where it can ferment food to access nutrients, and all these things. So we learned how to pre-digest food with technology to have then access to it. This is just to highlight, to advocate wild food. Wild dandelion has 7 times more phytonutrients than spinach. So these plants are incredibly nutritious. If I go on a completely wild diet, which I've done during lockdown, just to take that opportunity, it took me about a week to adapt because food is incredibly bitter and it's incredibly nutrient dense. So I don't actually have to eat as much as I have to eat when I eat a conventional diet. This is the beginning of my foraging year. This is sort of February time when the snow melts under the birch trees, if there is snow. This is what we call the poor man's cow in Bavaria, because you can milk the birch tree without actually looking after it much. And yeah, this is something that's really beautiful. You can boil it down to syrup. You can have it as tea. It's highly diuretic. It's very much a detox. If you do ever think about drilling into a tree, make sure you know exactly what you're doing, because you can harm the tree. Yeah, pine pollen is so nutritious. I think all the nutritional properties that are in the pollen wouldn't actually fit on my slides. It's incredibly nutritious, and what's so beautiful about pine pollen, it's such an ephemeral food, so you have to be in tune with the pine tree, otherwise you'll definitely miss it. You have about a window of 1 or 2 weeks per year. Sea kale is one of my favorites here. The edibility of the roots of sea kale is our biggest breakthrough for the colonization of ancient Britain. This is by Gordon Hillman. He works with Ray Meara a lot. And yeah, sea kale is absolutely beautiful. The roots, if you put them in the fire and then scrape off the black outside, the inside tastes exactly like sweet potato. And this is basically starch that is easily available for us. And starch is really, sugar is incredibly rare in nature. So this is fantastic. Yeah, all these seeds that fly around this time of year. So you have the plantain seed, which is sort of our native chia. The glaucum flavum is a poppy that grows on the sea and has the longest seed pods of any plant in the UK. And then the pendula sedge is a very safe seed for us to forage, and you can gather easily 1 kilo in half an hour. It's a beautiful food to forage, totally undervalued. For me, it's very important to know how to forage. So it's a giving and taking, really. So regenerative foraging, and this is something where other contemporary hunter-gatherer societies can give me clues how to do that. So here, this is a picture from California, where people would use a digging stick, prepare the soil basically with the digging stick, and then harvest Brodia bulbs. And when they do that, little bulblets would fall off into the soil, into the freshly prepared soil, and there's a direct link with when they stopped foraging for the Brodia species and the decline of Brodia species in California. So it's very interesting. The foraging behavior of these people actually helped increase the population of Brodia species. And this is exactly what we see at Neb Wildland. You can either be a forager with a digging stick, or you can be a Tamworth pig. You know, you rootle the soil in the winter, exposing and activating the seed bank. Then you have things like speedwell coming up, and chickweed, which is an incredibly beautiful weed to forage. And then the European turtle dove, which is the next animal most likely to go extinct in the UK. It needs those seeds in May when it arrives from South Africa. So it relies on this sort of, there's a direct link between the pig and the turtle dove. Eating abundant weeds. So this is thistle and nettles, and these are both plants that you can't actually over harvest. You know, so harvesting plants that are actually really abundant. Peeling the stem of a thistle and dipping it into humus is one of the most exciting things, and it's so good. Especially then also the nettle. There is endless other things you can do with nettles. It's a plant I have a deep relationship with, really. And then sometimes when I start working with a plant in the beginning of the season, like this is the elder flower, and a plant that's very important for me, I would actually do some smudging and smoke this plant to take my moment. A ceremony is basically a moment to pause and to acknowledge something, you know. So I just, because it's quite busy in the summer, so I just pause for a minute and just acknowledge that resource before I tap into it. And that's really important for me to do that. So here, the hunting aspect, just very quickly. For me, I made the pledge that I either eat meat that I hunt myself, or I don't eat meat anymore, because I wanted this, just wanted this to happen. So what's interesting is that this, the biggest increase in size of humans we made when we stepped from scavenging to hunting. What's the difference? Scavenger and hunter both eat meat, but actually meat is the least nutritional part of an animal. So for me, when I eat meat, I don't eat meat, I actually eat an animal. On an average size white-tailed deer, this comes from Dr. Bill Schindler, an archaeologist and nutritionist. On an average size white-tailed deer, the part that is usually discarded would provide, depending on your caloric needs, 13 to 31 days worth of calories. That's the part that not only is more nutrient dense, but also more nutrient accessible, around 50%. So currently we throw about 50% of the animal away. And so for me, what I do when I go out hunting or preparing an animal, I do something called a head-to-tail butchery. So I try and use absolutely everything: the bones, the marrow, the brain, the eyes, the blood if I can, the urine, the intestines, the organs, absolutely everything from the animal. And I think for me, this is the only way it really makes sense. I never see an animal as a target when I observe them, but as a complex creature with more freedom that I will ever have. And I told you before, you know, when I went to the island, that's probably the only glimpse in my life that I could feel that freedom that an animal has. So it's a real respect. And this is what happens, you know, when you participate in your ecosystem, you create a landscape that looks very much like this. And this could be the picture of our landscape, how it used to be about 10,000 years ago. It's a woodland pasture-like structure that's very, very dynamic and ever changing. England 10,000 years ago was a very, very open landscape, and I believe the same happened in Germany when you have ruminants and predators both living together. Conservation is humankind's attempt to protect nature from ourselves, yet we're not separate from it. We often forget that we're a part of nature in an independent relationship. Even a New York City girl needs a connection to the wild. And this is my last slide for today. Thank you very much for listening to my words. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to to ask.
That's amazing, Michael. Would you like to come out of screen share so that we can then ask questions? So if anybody has any questions, I think everybody is stunned into silence at the moment. There's no questions coming through, but I'm sure there will be. And I know I've got some. Oh, yeah, Jenny Price Nelson saying, Dixter, do you hunt rabbits?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So if there is a rabbit, so we have rabbits that come into the estate and they eat some of our plants. And then a lot of my colleagues go, oh, Michael is the man to sort this out, that would be his dinner. And for me, the only reason I would go hunting is for food. So if I'm not hungry and I don't need meat, I wouldn't hunt this. And there was this one rabbit that would eat a lot of plants in our estate. And I said to the guys, I feel like this rabbit is a teacher, just to hunt something because it eats plants that we like to look at is a ridiculous reason to hunt. So I said, I'm not going to hunt this or predate on this rabbit. I think this is a teacher. So it really did.
That's wonderful. Wendy wants to know, could you give us an example of a typical day's meals?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So in the morning I have smoothies, and so what I do is I have a jar here. This is about 50 edible plants from my bioregion, which I incorporate into my smoothie. And then I just add some turmeric, cinnamon, lots of nuts and seeds in the morning. In the winter, I sometimes have bone broth. I feel like that's the ultimate breakfast that we grew up on for thousands and thousands of years. Then for lunch, I would have maybe a salad. It depends. It depends on the season, really. In the spring, I basically go vegan. In the summer, I eat a lot of fish. In the autumn, loads of seeds and nuts. And in the winter, I would eat a fair amount of meat. Mm-hmm. So it's a foraging. It's a diet that is seasonal.
And Molly Hendry's watching, and she says, what are the best ways you've gained confidence that you're eating and or identifying and eating the right things? Yeah,
thanks, Molly. Nice to see that you're watching. For me, it's about spending time with the plant, really. It's the only way. But a very good way is to go out with someone who lives in that bioregion and who's confident, and to go tag along those people. And if you have ID books, you have to cross-reference that with at least two sources, two or three is even better.
Right.
But spend time with that plant and get to know each other.
Yeah. And how much time did you spend in Namibia? How long were you out there for?
We went for about 2 weeks to the tribe. Yeah.
Wow. And how accepting were they of you? I mean, were they really welcoming and accepting? How did they feel about you coming and observing? How was the dynamics between you?
That's a very interesting question. They were they're very reserved towards white people because they had so much colonization happening and so many NGOs who said they're gonna stay for years, but they actually after 2 years they left. So they're very reserved towards white people coming in. But this was with a course that I've done called The Old Way, and people have come last year, and it's really just about learning the tracking and learning the foraging and learning the culture. So this year was the first year where they actually started to share some of their stories with us. And last year they wouldn't share any stories. So that was really interesting. They're sort of starting to trust us because we really just come to learn about their tracking.
That's interesting. We've got an interesting question here. Would you raise your kids with this food? How to deal with their needs, in inverted commas, that they see in society? So yeah, how would you approach that?
Yeah, I that's a tricky one. I feel like I was it has to I don't know. I think the honest answer is I really don't know. I feel like I would love to, if I ever have children, empower them to be confident in the wild, but then choose their own path. I think, and whatever path they choose, that's great.
And one question I've got, Michael, is how you balance your way of living with living in the world that we live in today? And I know you mentioned at one point you have a sort of almost like you pause and like a slight ritual before you cook and eat, but you know, it's this passing between the crazy world we live in and this very pure and sensible world, this slow world that you're creating. How do you transition from one zone to another without, you know, like you were saying on the island, you spent time and you felt really, you know, weird being on your own, but on a day-to-day basis, you know, you're working at Dixter, but then you're going foraging. How easy is that to do, that sort of transitioning between these two worlds?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. I'm living in both worlds, and the thing is, they don't often go good together. You know, like at Dixter, I start at 8 and finish at 5. You know, but the sparrowhawk doesn't work like this. You know, the badger doesn't work like this, and the tides don't work like this. You know, so that's why in the summer I often have very little sleep, because I really go out so I finish at 5, then I try and go out and forage some nettles, then I go to the sea because the tide's just right, and I have to go there because it's the only time in the month when there's a full moon and the tide's incredibly low, so I can forage these mussels which I don't have access to otherwise, you know. So the nature doesn't wait for you. So I do what I can, but I know that there's so much more. So I think the most valuable aspect of, you know, living wild is actually creating the time to do that. I think time is one of our most valuable goods that we have, and to create time for that. So I realized, you know, one day I thought, so if I work 1 hour, I'll make, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 pounds. So if I forage for 1 hour, I can maybe create a meal that will be worth about that money, you know. So then I realized, actually working part-time, you know, I don't believe in a 5 days week, really. I feel like you know, if you look at Finland or New Zealand, they already starting to introduce 4-day weeks, you know. Creating time, I think. And if I'm really busy, my diet goes downhill, you know.
So do you find yourself sometimes being stressed by that whole thing that you have to get up at 3 in the morning and go and fish? I mean, can that sometimes be counterproductive because actually you're stressing about that way of life, or I mean, do you have to kind of readdress the balance sometime and kind of give yourself a good talking to? How do you do that?
Yeah, totally. I have to set my priorities, and then sometimes, you know, I definitely I prioritize work because it's important. That's what I do, and I enjoy what I do. But yeah, sometimes I'm incredibly tired at work. But then, you know, you quite often I use the Dixter. It's a garden. But to be honest, what's really interesting is the best foraging ground I have is the garden that I work in, because it's a highly disturbed space, and it's the same with allotments or your garden at home. I bet you have incredibly abundant and incredibly nutritious weeds at home that you can forage, like chickweed, or it depends which climate you're in, you know. So it's about rethinking. I actually got not kicked out, but advised to leave the allotment society when I was part of an allotment, because they told me to weed my allotment. You know, they said, "Can you please weed your allotment?" You know, so I said, "Okay, fine." So I weeded out all the non-edible weeds that I could see, and it wasn't that much. You know, it was a bit of it wasn't that much, you know. And then they came back and said, "Can you please weed your allotment?" I said, "I did weed my allotment. I only have edible weeds in there, you know. There's anything, I can eat anything. I can eat teasels, I can eat evening primrose, you know, I can eat the honesties, I can eat the chickweed, you know, the dandelion, I can eat them all. The nettle, you know, the thistles." I don't understand. It was really funny to these two.
Fantastic. Nick Aikman wants to know, do you forage fungi in the same way? And you know, have you any advice on that?
Fungi is something that you have to invest energy and passion to it. It's something you can't just read and then go out on the weekend and be what I call a weekend warrior. You know, you have to with fungi, you have to really dedicate passion. So I have about 5 species I use for fire, and then about 4 or 5 species I use for medicine, and then sort of 4 or 5 I use for food. But I'm very, very sensitive and very slow with that because I didn't grow up here, you know. And there is some fungi that might be edible where I grew up, but might be look exactly like that in America, but might be poisonous, you know.
Yeah, no. Okay, and there's a slightly strange question here. What do you do with the money you earn? That's quite the personal question. I'd like to have your knowledge about eatable plants. So I don't know quite where that question's coming from, but that's a little bit strange. When you're going back to weeds, I was so delighted for you to show Carex pendula and that you could eat the seeds, because to me that's such an invasive weed that when I see it I kind of think, oh God, you know, and yet, you know, you're saying, hey, that's really a good source of seeds, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I really love about foraging. It's not really about what you do, it's about what changes while you do it, you know. So I used to think about nettles and dandelions like, oh my God, they're such a nuisance. And now I'm so happy to have them near me because they love to grow near where humans live. Yeah. And it's about my relationship completely shifted and changed. And that's what I really would love to see more, that in allotments and in gardens, that people stop spraying those friends that can do such great service for you, you know, and having a sort of better relationship with your local bioregion.
Yeah. And what about passing on this knowledge, Michael? I mean, would you be doing foraging lectures at Dixter, or foraging walks, or is that something that you think might be possible, or how do you see yourself passing this on?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was thinking with climate change and the urgency, that what do I want to invest my energy into? And I think nature connection is something I can definitely see myself developing in more professionally. And yeah, I don't know, but the thing about it is, once you start teaching it, you stop doing it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So at the moment,
it's a difficult balance. Yeah. Julie over in Oregon has asked a question, and she's saying, Michael, do you still love the comfrey plant?
The comfrey is great because it's called the bone knitting plant. It can actually help produce new cell growth, and it's so good that you have to be careful that your bones are actually set when you break them, because it knits them together so quick. So I once went to my doctor, I said, fine, I cracked my toe, it was painful. I go to the doctor, fine, So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And I said, can I use comfrey? Is that fine? Are you cool with that? And she said, yeah, try it out. If it works, if I see you again, then we do something else. And so I just used comfrey, and it was fantastic. It healed, and it's such a good ally. Yeah, I love comfrey. Yeah.
Wow. And that's eating comfrey. So you're not applying it, you're eating it, you're ingesting it, digesting it.
You could do that. I would go easy on that. I wouldn't do too much of it, but what I did was I mashed it up, and then I applied it on my foot and bandage that up, and then I would change that sort of after 12 hours.
Okay. So it's more like a what do you call it? I can't remember what we used to do it to horses' feet with bran. Where you're drawing something out. Yeah. Riona in Dublin saying, a bit like me the other week, she was saying it's a fantastic talk, and she really loves your sweater, your woolly jumper, which I was admiring the other day. I just think it's gorgeous, absolutely wonderful. A compress, that's it. Patricia's come up with a poultice, that's it. I was looking for the word I was looking for was poultice. Lovely. Michael, that's been so fascinating, because I've known snippets of this from you, but to see and hear your story, and certainly the beginning part of the story too, about doing those wonderful treks and then being on your own. Where was that island that you were? Is that whereabouts was that incredible place?
It's on the border to Denmark in the North Sea.
Okay, yeah. Amazing. So it has been wonderful to see this kind of joined up story, and it's always fascinating to hear what you're up to, and it's brilliant and nice to know that you are taking time out to do this. So you're now working a 4-day week, and you're leaving a day to do this, and go and forage, and brilliant. So where is your next trip? I guess you haven't been able to plan any overseas trips now for a while.
Yeah, that's true. And so yeah, tomorrow I'll drive off and go tracking. So tomorrow I'll track and trail deer for the weekend, and I think I'll do more small trips. But yeah, it'll definitely change. Yeah, but it's beautiful because you can just really focus on what's right in front of you. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And you're in such a beautiful part of the world to do that as well.
Yeah.
And oh, Pat's asking, how did you end up at Dixter? And actually, that's something that crossed my mind. So when you left Germany and you thought you wanted to, leaving landscape architecture, where was the connection with Dixter?
I was working in a garden called Hermannshof with Kassian Schmidt.
Yeah.
And Kassian has a close connection to Dixter, so I was lucky. It's if you're ever in Germany, it's worth visiting Hermannshof. And yeah, so I came for an internship and I just never took that last flight.
So many people do that, don't they? So many people do it. I'd forgotten that you were at Hermannshof, and of course, actually, we have a garden masterclass hopefully planned for Hermannshof next year, which we had to delay from this year. We're doing a 2-day course there with Bettina and Cassian, who are wonderful people. Michael, there's been lots of lovely comments and thank yous, and what I'll do is I'll copy them and email them to you, because I think it's really nice for you to be able to see what people are saying, and thanking you for your support. It really is fascinating, and saying thank you, Michael, very interesting the way you're managing to balance your life. Yeah, I think that's a lesson to us all, really, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks so much, for having me. It was really lovely.
Oh, it's been wonderful, and I hope to be back at Dixter very soon. I do miss my monthly visits to Dixter, so say hello to everybody there, and have a good time tomorrow.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Thanks for everyone for tuning in.